Former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane Zuma, says that he believes that he's caught in a political storm.
Zuma appeared before the State Capture Commission in Parktown, Johannesburg, to respond to allegations made against him by several witnesses at the commission.
And I think we'd all be fooling ourselves to think that there hasn't been a political play in the background. Right. You know, speculation is one thing, but I think if we look back in hindsight, the history speaks for itself. If you look at how a lot of the issues have come to the fore, the people that have brought the issues to the fore, what has happened to people on either side of the political wranglings, I think that is an obvious case. And I've said it before and I'm saying it again, I believe I'm unfortunately caught in a political storm.
Meanwhile, the former Public Protector Thuli Madonsela has accused Duduzane Zuma of lying at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. This after Zuma testified yesterday, saying Madonsela had not granted him a fair opportunity to give his version of events. Madonsela spoke to the SABC News earlier today.
What he told the Commission is not true, and he knows the truth. There's documentary evidence to the truth, but I don't need to tell him that he knows the truth. Why he told an untruth to the Commission, I don't know.
In our previous conversations with you, you held back from commenting on the processes of the Zondo Commission. Why did you feel a need to come out this time?
Well, because I was asked on specific process issues, and I responded to process issues. I haven't responded to substantive issues because I understand I'm not a witness to the Commission. But on this particular issue, it's a process issue, and I thought I needed to just clarify that. But also, it's not the first time I've clarified a process issue. On the Freddy Dairy matter, I clarified something which helped the Commission to then go to the Public Protector and ask for information. Had I not said anything, the information on, no, not Freddy Dairy, it was on the waterproof lending matter. Had I not said anything in public, the Commission would have never known that an investigation was done and that there was information that had not been given to it.
We've previously had a big public interest story where the former president claimed that you didn't sufficiently get his side of the story, and now his son is asserting the same. What are your thoughts about this?
I don't know what the game is. All I can say is the Commission of Inquiry, headed by Deputy President Judge Zondo, is not there to review my decision. Anybody who was not happy with the way I conducted the investigation had an opportunity to take me on review to a court of law. Because the Commission is not a review authority on my decision. The Commission has to deal with the substantive issues around what happened, what should have happened, the discrepancy, and if not, was there improper conduct and how to fix it. And so at the core of it was the Zuma and Gupta families engaged in conduct that was about appointing people in government and removing people in government, or improperly influencing the president to do that. And if that happened, does it constitute state capture? And if it's state capture, how do we fix it? How was the taxpayer or how was the public affected by that?
Well, for more on today's proceedings, we're now joined by our reporter, Manqoba Mchunu. Thanks so much for joining us, Manqoba. So I suppose there's certain witnesses that the public eagerly await to hear what their versions are of the things that happened, and Duduzane certainly was one of those. And I wonder, just in totality, your take on what was presented by him. Was there anything explosive, or he really spoke about things that we knew already?
I think, Peter, you're correct in saying that, he was one of the highly anticipated witnesses, especially by the public, because of the allegations that have been leveled against him at the State Capture Commission. Allegations that he's the one that actually, was the fixer for the Guptas, the man who organized meetings with cabinet members, who could get cabinet members to go to the Guptas, where different offers or allegations that offers were made of either jobs or people were, told to accept bribes and things like that. So really being in that situation, being a business partner of the Guptas, not only a business partner of the Guptas, but also the son of the former president. So there was a lot of expectation with regards to what is it that he's going to say. Of course, there were no bombshells that were there. Of course, we did expect that he's going to give the testimony that he did. And I would say all in all, he did make some concessions, very few of them, but most of it was deny. Of course, which we heard in the past 2 days, denying the fact that there was a bribe offered to Mcebisi Jonas, also denying that he was part of several meetings at the Gupta compound, one of them in which Mxolisi Dukwana was there, and he says he was offered a bribe of 200 million rand. He denied also being part of many of those ANN7 meetings where apparently the former president Jacob Zuma was there and where issues of conflict of interest were raised. So he denied that as well. Johan Boysens, it denies the fact that also their engagement or their meetings were to discuss a certain complaint that he had played. He says no, it was purely social, and the reason that I took him to the Guptas is because he was inquisitive and he wanted to know. So it's been really denounced. There's been no people implicated. In fact, what Duduzane says is that he is innocent in all of this and then he's not corrupt.
All right, so what's happened now is that we have different versions now, officially for the first time. We've had Mcebisi Jonas and other people testifying. So I guess now the Commission of Inquiry has to try and find the truth between the versions that they have put forward. You said he gave very little concessions, but did he offer credible alternatives to the allegations that have been put forward before him?
I think, Peter, we for the first time got to hear his side of the story, his sequence of events or version of events according to him. Of course, Mcebisi Jonas says that I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know that we were going to the Guptas. I was offered a bribe. And after that, I left. I refused the bribe and I refused to take up the position as finance minister. Coincidentally, 2 days later, Nhlanhla is removed. But Duduzane maintains that, of course, that was a coincidence. But he says that he knew exactly Mcebisi Jonas when he went to the house that he's going to the Guptas. He knew what the topic was all about. None of the Gupta brothers were part of the meeting. In fact, only Rajesh, Tony Gupta, peeped into the room to talk to him about a meeting. But he says that, there was nothing mentioned. He doesn't know anything about a bribe. So I think two different versions, but of course...
What did he say the meeting at the house was about then, if the Gupta brothers weren't in the room?
He says that the meeting was to address a rumor that he's heard. And I think he's referred to two instances in which, he had invited people to the Gupta residences, or tried at least, with Minister Manqoba Mchunu, the then Minerals Resources Minister, because yesterday he also, through his testimony, revealed that, there was a rumor that he wanted to address with Manqoba Mchunu, the claim that, he had bad-mouthed the Gupta brothers. In this instance, he wanted to address a rumor involving some sort of blackmail between Fana Hlongwane and Mcebisi Jonas. Ironically, the two are friends, and Duduzane is not. So he says, I asked for the number because I could see that, they are not sorting this thing out. So I wanted them to talk. And being the person that knew of the rumor himself, he's the one that actually knew of the rumor, so he wanted to sit them down and address this rumor. This is contrary, though, to the evidence that was, given by Mcebisi Jonas, because he says when they got there, both Fana Hlongwane and Duduzane Zuma actually took no part in the meeting. They were like on the side, they were at the back, they did not participate at all. It was the Gupta brother that spoke to them. So there are a lot of contradictions, and I guess the chair is going to have to weigh them.
Did Duduzane Zuma say anything that didn't tie up with an affidavit put forward by the Gupta brothers or by Mr. Fana Hlongwane at all? There
were disparity there as well. First of all, you recall that Duduzane Zuma spoke of Mr. Rajesh Gupta peeping into the room, not being part of the meeting. But when he made his submissions to the Public Protector, Fana Hlongwane, his uncle on the other hand, refutes that Rajesh Gupta ever came into the room or peeped into the room. So that's one. And of course, the State Capture Commission saying, then who do we believe here? And Duduzane Zuma saying, Well, you must believe me. I say he peeped because he spoke to me. I don't know whether my uncle saw or he didn't see. The second issue, Peter, is the issue of whether there was a meeting or not. Because in March 2013, after Mcebisi Jonas had, 2016, I beg you, after Mcebisi Jonas had went public about the allegations, the Guptas through Oakbeck, their company, issued a statement actually saying there was no meeting, disputing that meeting. So he says there was a meeting, the Gupta says there was not a meeting. So who's telling the truth?
And
here?
one of the brothers say he's got an alibi, and there's a woman who's unknown who can corroborate this, but she's seemingly hard to find.
Well, of course, the Justice, the Commission Chair, Deputy Chief Justice, alluding to that, to the fact that there will be a witness who will come and speak on behalf of one of the Gupta brothers with regards to the alibi of where they were. But when giving testimony, Duduzane Zuma did exclude them from the meeting. He says the two brothers, Atul and AJ, were out. Either one was in the office and I think one was traveling. But Rajesh, because they work very closely with him, they mostly work from the home at the Gupta residence. But he was also not part of the meeting. He just peeped into the room.
Thuli Madonsela, former public protector, also from the sidelines, offering a thought about the veracity of some of the things that Duduzane said.
Of course, this relates to his claims that he made from yesterday about the public protector not offering him an opportunity to respond, because I think it emanated from a question where he was asked about the bribe and asked about those allegations, and he says, no, I cannot speculate on this. I mean, why didn't the public protector ask me then of my view? He seemed to have, sort of said that he was never at all consulted, or nor did his submissions were asked by the public protector. But of course, today he admitted to the fact that, the public protector's office actually tried to contact him. They made contact with him. He spoke to a lady who did explain that he will need to give his side of the story. And then after that, he says after a few weeks, then there was a subpoena that came to him. But he still says, at the time, I was overseas, I was staying abroad, I was no longer staying in South Africa, and I was attending to business, so I could not come. So now the question is, were you at all afforded an opportunity by the Public Protector's Office to respond? And I think that came out that there was some sort of communication made with him, even though he says it was not enough. And he believes that this whole report, by excluding his testimony, is what has led him to where he is now.
And there were also questions raised about whether the NPA and the police perhaps didn't do their work properly in terms of affording him his rights, and that the Deputy Chief Justice also sort of went to that point and questioned that.
Well, Peter, recall that there's been previous testimonies where we've heard of how certain individuals were targeted and how some of the charges were trumped up against certain individuals, especially in the police, and people who are investigating corruption, and sort of how political scores were settled through, court cases. We've seen that in the previous, political issues that have arisen in the country. And of course, being a new administration and a new sort of administration taking over at that time and the end to the Zuma era, so to say, the question came around that to say, why were you charged if there was no evidence at all? Were you charged basically on this evidence of the meeting that happened? And so I think the justice trying to be fair in this point and trying to find out whether or not even people that, like Duduzane Zuma were actually, victims of, some sort of political, score settling that have taken place there. And whether there was indeed enough evidence for him to be arrested and prosecuted, and whether police had abused power. That's the question that he wanted to ask, to say, we have to look at whether the police actually did abuse power in this instance.
And then finally, I suppose one of the things that he wanted to do desperately was to get his side of the story to the public, but also to get across to the public that he's done nothing wrong at all in all of this. Your feeling about whether he's done enough to convince the public?
Oh, it's very difficult, Peter, to gauge whether he's done enough. People have their own perceptions of what they make of the truth. Some of them saying that, he was evasive in a way. Some, on social media, some of them even saying that he sounded arrogant, and stuff like that. So it's very hard to convince the public. I think it is actually the judge and the commission chair that has the very difficult task of, really separating facts from,
sifting through the version and seeing what is true, what is not. But in his ending testimony, he made a statement to the public. He says,
I am not corrupt, and I want you to believe me when you meet me on the streets, I'm not corrupt. But has it done enough? That we'll find out at a later stage. We know that he might be called back to testify. There's still more people that are implicating him. But I mean, there are various sort of links to Duduzane Zuma, but he's denying most of them. He's denying that he was part of the meetings. He's denying, but I mean, the allegations are there. Yeah. So it's still to be seen.
All right. So still a long way to go with this story, certainly. Manqoba, thanks so much indeed for bringing the story to us. Thank you. All right. That's where we'll leave that for the time being.